Number 1. All in my head. I'm going to explain this story the best that I can. It is a weird story, and it has been not only freaking the hell out of me, but it made me question what might be going on in my head and reality itself. I have epilepsy. For the most part, it doesn't really affect my day-to-day life, because I take anticonvulsants every day. But before I did, I had several seizures, and other related issues like auditory hallucinations. Although the seizures have not been present since I've been taking the medication, the hallucinations have occasionally been. They normally consist of hearing things like slamming doors or a tiny bit of a conversation. It would be like hearing someone yell at you for a short time. We lost a family member a few years ago. It was a cousin of mine, but he was more like a brother to me. He even lived with us for a long time because his mother, my aunt, was unable to take care of him. He slept in my room and we did everything together. When he was 16, he moved back in with his mother. We only found out later that the mother had been terribly abusive. He died a year later, during the punishment. His mom had beaten him severely, and she was sent to jail for second-degree murder. My mom was responsible for being the executor. He was cremated, and she gave me a locket that had a tiny bit of his ashes in it. I hung it on the wall at the foot of my bed, so I would see him in the morning when I woke up. There was a loud pounding on the door, and I heard, "Get the fuck up, you useless piece of shit!" I jumped off my bed in fear and looked around. There was no one in my room, and I checked the door. No one was in the hallway. I realized it had been a hallucination, so I went to lay down. I was reading a book when I had heard it, and I went back to reading. And then, I don't know, but I felt something pressing on the foot of my bed. It was like a foot on the mattress pressing it down. My heart stopped because that was what my cousin used to do when I was in bed and he wanted me to wake up. I have to admit I was scared, but of course I remembered the auditory hallucination and thought maybe this was one too, although I've never had any physical feeling with them before. The following night, I laid down to go to sleep. When I did, at one point, while I was laying there, I heard, "Look under your bed. I'm hiding there." As usual, I always got scared when the hallucination began, but when I realized how it was, I then would calm down a little. However, that one was different than I had ever experienced before, and I was chilled. I thought about looking under the bed, but then I decided not to. I curled up, scared, in the bed, and then, once again, I felt something like a foot pressing on the foot of my bed. I looked. No one was there, but I did feel a little better. I mean, I don't believe in ghosts or anything. The feeling was just some sort of physical hallucination. But I felt better, almost thinking my cousin was there, protecting me in a way. The hallucinations continued for a long time. I told my doctor about them, and he told me it might be from stress from my cousin dying. And that made sense to me, and he increased the dosage of my pill. The hallucinations did not stop though, and they were always scary. People talking to me from my closet and under my bed. People pounding on the door. I was upset because I did not want to tell my doctor or my family about this. They would think I was freaking crazy. And still, every time I had one, I felt that foot pressing on the bottom of the bed, and it would make me feel better. I went off to college, packing my things when I was 18. Before I left to go, I remembered I didn't have my locket with me. I went to the bedroom and realized for the first time the locket was hung at the foot of the bed, exactly where I felt the foot pressing every time I had had a hallucination. And although I don't believe in the afterlife, I was comforted by the thought that maybe, just maybe, he had been there, pressing his foot on the bed and telling me There was nothing to be scared of. I'm in college now, and I have my own dorm room, now that I'm a junior. His locket hangs where it belongs, at the foot of my bed. I still have the hallucinations. They haven't slowed down in years, and they get scarier and scarier as time goes on. Now in college, I have an area of my room where there are a few boxes, and I always hear something scurrying around in the boxes, but there are no mice or anything there. The noises are there, and if I'm in bed when I hear them, I feel that foot pressing down, and I feel a little bit better, but still, it makes me wonder what's going on. Are the hallucinations real? And am I just chalking them up as hallucinations because of my history of that? And the foot pressing against the bed. I mean, that's all physical, there's no noise. I really don't know. But it has been going on for years, and I don't know if I should tell anybody, because, again, they probably won't understand. They'll probably increase my dosage of medication and leave it at that. I don't know. I guess if it's real, I can just count on my cousin being there for me. If it's all in my head, I just don't know.
I've recently been lucky enough to get a chance to live my dream as a teacher in Japan. I can't express the years of work that have gone into meeting the requirements for the program, and even now that it's happened, I almost can't believe it. But after all of my studies, it seems I still have a lot to learn. After being in Okinawa only a week, the festival of Obon came up. Obon is a festival in Okinawa that lasts 3 days, during which you honor your ancestors that have gone to heaven. There are a lot of carnival-like celebrations, and I found it absolutely fascinating. However, I had been going to the beach on a daily basis and taking pictures. As someone who has never seen the ocean, I found myself enthralled by it. I was also enjoying taking pictures to send home. But I was informed on the first day of Obon that you aren't to go near the ocean, lest ancestral spirits decide to take you back to heaven with them. Though I dismissed this as a silly superstition, I still intended to respect local custom, so I planned on not visiting the beach for a few days. That night, however, after spending time at the festival events and helping to set up a shrine, I was walking back to the hostel where I was staying, and noticed a few people along the shore. I found this curious, as I also noticed just how beautiful the moonlight shone on the water, and I had to get a picture. I figured if these locals could go closer to the shore, then surely it was okay for me, right? I was messaging a friend back in the States and sent them a picture of the nighttime ocean, thrilled with how well my phone took pictures in low light. I got closer to the shore, but could still see no more than the silhouettes of the locals by the water. I hoped they weren't going to be upset with the foreign guy taking pictures on the beach. I sent a photo to my friend, asking if they could see any ghosts. I was really enjoying these late-night shots, and the odd spooky feel of the empty beach, where usually there would be many people going about their lives. I began to get closer to the water, my eyes on the phone screen and the pictures I was taking, rather than where my feet were going. A message came through as I shot another picture. Maybe the people on the beach are the ghosts. I laughed at this and snapped another photo, just as a shout came up from down the beach. Fluent as I am, I had no idea what they were saying. It came then that I felt the water on my feet and a tug at the hem of my pants. I looked away from my phone and saw a small child reaching up and grabbing the leg of my pant. They were naked, wet, with their hair in their eyes. Panic set in immediately. I dropped my brand new phone in the ocean as I shook the kid off my pant leg, turned and ran. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw an older Japanese man running towards me, or maybe towards the kid. I wasn't sure, and I didn't stay to find out. I ran all the way back to my room, cursing myself for not listening to my boss, telling me to stay away from the beach. What the hell was that? A prank on a foreign guy? Or was there a child in need of help, and I ran off scared like a chicken? I comforted myself with the fact that the locals probably helped the kid out, as it was so dark I doubt any of them knew it was me. I was afraid of being teased later. What I do know is that there are no such thing as ghosts. Ancestral spirits dragging you to heaven on the waves of the sea? Nonsense. I know this. I do. Don't I?
Number 3. So I was going to do an internship for my education. It was in another city, but close to me, like 20 kilometers or something. I went every day by train and everything seemed normal. There was always this guy at a house close to the place where I did my internship. He was always smoking by the door, so days and weeks go by and I see him every day almost. I always greeted him and everything, and he seemed like a normal, friendly guy. So 2 months later, I sort of became friends with this man, always talking with him when I met him, and one day I walked by, and I did not have a cigarette and wanted to light one up. He saw me with no cigarettes and went inside his house to get one. I walked in the house with him and just to get the cigarette and then left. So I became a guest now. One day later, he told me he had some friends over and asked me to come to his house. With my dumb mind, I said yes and went. So there I was with 5 complete strangers, smoking and drinking a bit of beer. Nothing seemed harmful. My mom called me and asked me to come home, so I did. I left them, and he said to me on the way out, "Yeah, man, come back again." And days went by, and then I was sort of friends with the guy. This chillin' at his place went on for over 3 weeks or so, and then the day came that I will never forget. I was just finishing from my day at the internship and went home. I walked the route I always took and knocked on his door. A man I did not know opened the door, and I asked him, "Is that guy home?" He told me he left just 5 minutes ago, but will be back soon. So I just entered the living room and chilled. Along came another dude who I did not see there before, and he sat with me. Then the guy who opened the door left. So there I was in a home with a man I did not know, and it was not his home. But I did not make a big deal out of it and just kept talking with that man. It was nothing but killing time. Then a moment came that I still remember to this day very clearly. He got a phone call and took it. He was talking with some dude, and I heard the other man talking, but could not make out what he was saying. Then the door opened, and the guy who opened it for me came back. And he laid a big bag of white stuff, which I assume was cocaine, on the table, and he left without saying a word. Then the guy who was on the phone said to the other person on the phone, "You want to come to the house?" He smiled. Then he said, "That kid is here." He gave me a look that I still remember to this day. His eyes were so cold and staring through my soul. Time froze and I directly got up and left. I was headed to the door, and he asked me, "Where do you think you're going?" I acted like I was not running away and said, "I remember I just had an appointment." Just as I left the door, I sprinted away from that house, straight to the train station, and left the city. When I arrived at my city, I saw a guy waiting for me outside the station. He came up to me and he said, "Hello, how are you?" I acted like I didn't hear him and I walked by. Then when I arrived at my bicycle, which was almost broken by the way, I saw 2 guys on a scooter talking to the man that talked to me, and they directly looked at me. At this moment, I swear to God, I believed that I was going to be dead that day. I always visited my best friend before I went to my house. Every day we hung out, so I went there and I told him the story. That day, when I went home from his house to my house, which was like 5 minutes with the bike, I feared for my life, but I came home safely. So the next day I was going to the internship again, but I was very aware that there was danger now, and I have to keep my eyes open. I took a different route this time, and I did not see anything for a couple of days. At this point I was carrying a pocket knife with me all the time. Then one day I was walking the new route to my internship, and I froze. Just as I thought they had forgotten about me, I saw a van in the middle of the road with the door open, and everyone who had been in the house who was chilling was in the van. Something in my gut told me if I walked by there, it'll be the last walk I ever take in my life. So I took another route, and that day became my last day there at the internship. So then I did not go to that city anymore. But one day, I saw them again in my own neighborhood. I was thinking, how could they know where I live? And then it hit me. When we were chilling there, questioning me about where I lived, they were trying to get to know about me. I think they were kidnapping people and selling them, or even worse activities than that. So 4 days later, I saw them in my neighborhood again, and I saw them waiting at the end of my street every day. I had a different place of internship this time, and now they were following me everywhere. I swear to God it was like I was the mouse and they were the cat, but they were unable to catch me all the time. They had a van, and I had a bike, so I could go on small roads that they could not go. And it happens that the city where I lived in had a lot of bike-only roads, and there was always a lot of traffic in the city. So 3 months of escaping them went by, but they kept following me. And every day when I left my house, I kissed my mom goodbye like I never may come back. I did not tell her because she was going through some tough times. Her mother had just died, to be exact, so to lose your son also would be too much for her. I swear on my life that every day for 3 months I escaped them at this point. I was carrying a very large sharp kitchen knife in my backpack with the handle sticking out so I can pull it out real quick, if I needed to. Then on another day I was walking and had to go to school. I took a look out the window and the van again was parked right beside my house. And it felt like my brain had melted. I could not think clear anymore. I had had enough. I did not want to call the cops on them because in my country, you have to have evidence to prove it if they are chasing you. I only had my story, and if they knew that I called the cops on them, they would only be more aggressive. I just wanted them to leave me alone and stop showing up wherever I went, but they did not. So that morning I went to school and stopped by a store to buy some cola. Then the van came in front of the shop and stopped exactly next to my bike. The door of the driver was literally next to my bike. If he opened his door, he would almost touch the bike. Then a man came out of the car at the passenger side and walked into the store. He stared at me, and it wasn't a friendly look by any means. I could almost recognize him from the house, but I wasn't sure which one he was. Then when I walked to my bike, I heard the door of the driver's side opening. Then a moment came that I remember like yesterday. I did not care about anything or anyone at that exact moment. I threw my keys to the ground, grabbed a hold of my knife to get it out of the backpack, but then I stopped and was really speaking to myself in my head. What if this man comes out of his car and comes to me and he's dead meat? I will kill him so badly that he wished he wasn't born. The door was opening. He was trying to get out of his car, but he left when he saw me holding the knife, which made me happy because even though I was scared he would hurt me, I did not want to do a terrible thing by stabbing him. I immediately grabbed my bike, and the man who was in the store was just watching it all. As I was about to leave, he came out of the store, and I gave him a look which I call to this day the stare of death. And from that day on, I never saw them again. The lesson I learned from this is that you have to fight fire with lava, and you have to eat, otherwise you will be eaten.
The Messenger. It has taken me a long time to tell this story. I'm 27 years old now, and this happened to me when I was 14. My name is Adam, and I have one older brother named Seth. I haven't seen Seth in 13 years. I have no idea where he is, or if he is even still alive, but I do know why he left. Seth was 2 years older than me, and we were very close. Although all brothers tend to get into scuffles with each other, with Seth and I, they were few and far between. For the most part, he and I did everything together. He taught me how to fish. He let me play football and baseball with him and his older friends. Although Seth was bigger and stronger than I was, he always sold me to other people like I was superior to him. He told people I was smarter than he. He told them I was the talented brother who was going to be so much more successful than anyone could dream of. I really loved him, and he was easily the best friend I have ever had. Around the time I turned 14, however, Seth began acting very odd. At first, I didn't think my parents thought much of it. He was wearing black all the time and seemed like he was really depressed. Rather than hanging out with me, or even his friends, he took to spending a lot of time alone in his bedroom. He obviously kept the lights off at all times as well, because there was no light coming from under the door. It may have seemed like typical 16-year-old boy sort of stuff, and that is likely why my parents didn't pay it any mind. But I was closer to Seth than they were. I knew him better than they did, and I knew that this was not typical teenage stuff. Hell, I was a teenager at the time and going through a lot of that myself. With Seth, though, it was something more. I would walk by his room at night and would hear him talking to someone. I never heard another voice, and I always chalked it up to the fact that he must have been talking on his cell phone. But the conversations were never pleasant. Whomever he was talking to, Seth was always at odds with that person. Whatever it was that was bothering my brother, he never told me. He was never angry with me either. He would say hello if I greeted him, and he always offered me a friendly, if not extremely worn-out smile. But rather than do anything else or say anything to me, Seth would immediately go into his room, lock himself in there, and wouldn't be seen again for the rest of the day. After a few months of this behavior, and no sign of it stopping, I was sitting at my computer doing homework. I was having a difficult time with it, so I decided to take a break and chat with some friends on Yahoo Messenger. This was long before the days when Skype and Facebook were the norm. I got a message from unknown user. I don't feel comfortable sharing the real name, so I'll just call him Yahoo Stranger 1. This person sent me a message saying the following: "If you don't keep very far away from Seth, I am going to end you." At first, I was too alarmed to say anything, but after I composed myself, I messaged the person back, told him that Seth was both my brother and my best friend, and I would hang out with him whenever I wanted. The person didn't respond. I kept sending him a message asking who he was, but his only response was, "You've been warned." I wanted to confront Seth about this, but he refused to speak to me. When I mentioned this message to him, there was a little bit of recognition in his eyes, but he just forced a very weary smile, tousled my hair, and told me there was nothing to worry about, and that he would take care of it. That was the very last time I ever saw my brother. The following day, he didn't come out of his room to go to school. I went up and knocked on his door at my mum's request, but he didn't answer. My parents tried to get him out of his room as well, but the door was locked and he didn't answer. My parents eventually had to pick the lock on the door, and when we entered, Seth wasn't there. What's more is that many of his things were gone, and there was a note on his bed that simply said, "Goodbye." My parents, of course, called the police, and went through the whole missing child procedure. But it wasn't until I curiously turned on the monitor to Seth's computer that I got a little bit of information about what was going on. The very first thing I noticed was that Seth's Yahoo Messenger was up, and there was an open conversation. The conversation was with my screen name, and Seth's screen name was Yahoo Stranger 1. It was him that had sent me the message. Seth had also left his cell phone behind. I suppose this was to keep our parents from being able to track him. Remember all of those times I thought I heard him arguing on the phone with someone? He had no calls in his history other than with my parents. If he was arguing with someone, it wasn't over the phone. But the true scariness came from the fact that there was a long and detailed conversation on Yahoo Messenger. It was between Yahoo Stranger 1 and the screen name that we knew was Seth, and the conversation was horrid. Yahoo Stranger 1 was telling Seth over and over to hurt me. There were these grisly and disgusting things that the messenger was telling him to do, and Seth's responses were adamant that he loved me and he wasn't going to hurt me. There was a message that night, the one after I told Seth about what happened. That was the scariest. Yahoo Stranger 1, who I assumed now was Seth, had told Seth to end me, and Seth refused and argued and pleaded with Yahoo Stranger 1 to leave him alone. I could tell in the messages that the conversation was causing my brother a lot of pain. Trying to figure out how Seth could have been having an instant messenger conversation with himself, I looked at the timestamps of the messages, and each one was at least 5 minutes apart. He had the passwords saved on his messenger for both accounts. I figured he had signed out and signed on both names repeatedly, answering the messages since Yahoo allows you to send offline messages. I don't know if Seth is schizophrenic, or if he has dissociative identity disorder, or if Yahoo Stranger 1 really was a different person. But what I am sure of is that the constant threats against me were what was weighing heavily on my brother all those months. And I have no doubt that the reason my brother, my best friend, left was that he was afraid he was actually going to hurt me. I keep hoping he'll come back one day. He's my brother, and I love him, and I could never be scared of him.
Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I want to thank Mortis Media for taking part in this collaboration. If you're not subscribed to him, well, why the hell not? Head over to his channel and do it. He's a great guy and an amazing narrator. I want to thank everyone who has been continuing to donate to the GoFundMe. It has really helped. It's still up, and like always, I don't ask anyone to donate. Just pass it along on social media, if you can. We've had a hell of a week because our cats have respiratory infections and kind of snotty eyes right now. This is why I was unable to upload my half of the collaboration on time. My kitties have to come first. Mortis, being the great guy he is, put up with my constant delays, and he was very patient. Thank you, buddy. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to click on the subscribe button below and the bell, or wait for the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of the closing. Comment on the video and share it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you would like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, send it to the address in the description. But always, most importantly, remember to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.